as you guys can see, I have C-3PO here, and he's a really loose mess. His legs are extremely floppy, arms are really loose, and not to mention the head portion just kind of just moves very easily. We're going to repair this. And as you can see, he's pretty beat up. My biggest thing with him isn't not necessarily the chrome wear, it's just the really loose joints he has. Loose joints are kind of a pain in the butt sometimes, and they're just not fun to deal with, especially when you have older action figures like this that can't even stand up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a little thing here that's called plumber's tape. And plumber's tape you can primarily get in any hardware store. It's a non-sticky tape, and I'll use some scissors here to kind of cut the bits and pieces off to kind of fit them in. So I'm going to show you how this works. This is a non-sticky tape. Like I said, it's primarily a piece of plastic Teflon is what it primarily is. So I'll just kind of pull a piece out here and I'll cut it. I know it looks like a fairly long piece, but these are pretty loose joints, so sometimes it takes a lot to kind of stick the Teflon between the shoulder parts. So I just kind of rolled up a piece here and attempting to kind of just shove the Teflon type of plumber's tape into the crease between the arm and the body part. Now this is not going to hurt your toys. This won't do anything to degrade them or anything like that. It's just primarily just a plastic bonding agent, basically, that doesn't really even bond. It just kind of wedges it in a safe manner, and it won't damage anything. So if you guys are really needing to fix that 3PO or 4-loom, or even like a Death Star droid, any of those, this tends to work pretty well on these because there's a rivet that's on the back of them, and you can't really take these guys apart unless you plan on doing the thing where it takes taking a drill and basically drilling out the old rivet and then replacing it with a screw. I mean, if you're inclined to do that, that's fine. But if you're trying to just keep them more or less authentic, you can do what I'm doing here. Okay, I've got it kind of wedged in there, so I'm going to snip off the piece. And I just kind of push it in with my fingernails. If you don't have long fingernails, you can use like a precision screwdriver or a spudger or any kind of, I mean, you can even use like a toothpick just to kind of shove the Teflon pieces in between to kind of give it a little more oomph. It just kind of wedges it in there. Now, a disclaimer is, though, if you do move the arms around a lot, you're more than likely going to end up getting the Teflon to kind of fall out. But if you notice, it's super tight now. The joint doesn't flop around, nowhere near what it did before. So I'm going to show how I did this real quick here. I'm going to do the second arm just as well. And it's a pretty easy fix. This isn't too difficult to do. Like I said, it's kind of inexpensive. Plumber's tape may run you about $3 or $4, and it's a really simple thing. You can pretty much find it anywhere. I don't know if Walmart happens to carry it, but I do know you can get it at any kind of like hardware store. And if you notice, as I'm pulling the tape around, I'm kind of pulling a little bit of tension on it, so that way it kind of pulls itself into the crease. It's a gentle tug. It's nothing extremely hard to do. Now, I know a lot of people in the past, I remember kids way back in the 80s would use string. And string works just as well if you want to use thread. But just keep in mind, the stuff will break down over time. So if it breaks down over time, you're going to end up having to replace it in the future. Now, this Teflon stuff here tends to work pretty well, and it doesn't actually damage the plastics or anything. It won't discolor nothing or anything like that, and it's a really good way to just tighten up those joints. But if you do move the arm in the direction that you actually put the Teflon in, it'll kind of tighten a little bit more and kind of wear in. But if you start doing it the other opposite direction, sometimes it may cause the Teflon to stick out and try to come out. It's not a hard fix, it's just an idea, you know, like a thing you have to kind of keep in mind when you're doing this type of thing. Now, as for the hips are a lot more difficult on 3PO just because the way they're designed. You have to kind of loop the piece into the top portion of the hip and almost kind of force it in. It's not an easy thing to do. This is a real struggle. The time I did this was you know, it wasn't too humid out, it wasn't too cold, it wasn't too hot. It's kind of, you know, midsummer, and, you know, my apartment, you know, nice and cool. So that had nothing to do with any of the tolerances and such not wanting to fit correctly. So, and I'm just primarily, like I said, using my fingernails to kind of push the Teflon, and you can kind of get it in there. It doesn't really take a whole lot, especially on the hip portion, because it's already kind of an awkward shape as it is. So it will make it a lot easier for you to do the repair. Like I said, this doesn't do anything to hinder your toy. Now, you can see I just kind of pulled on it real hard and it popped right back out. So this is a very, very struggling portion to do. Legs are the hardest part on 3PO. This will actually work as well on the other figures in the line. The other figures have more of a rubberized kind of plastic versus this harder plastic. So it's a little more forgiving on that, but on these harder plastic ones like I'm showing here, it's kind of a challenge to get it in there. But as long as you can get enough in there that it actually tightens the joint, that's primarily what you're going for. It does take some time to kind of struggle with to push this piece in, and it's not an easy thing to do, but like I said, you can do this. If you have one of those cell phone repair kits that's got the little plastic spudger or something like that, you can use that to kind of force the Teflon into the joint. You can also, like I said, use your fingernails. You can use a precision screwdriver. Sometimes moving the joint back and forth will help get the Teflon to actually fit into the seam between the leg and the hip joint. And it's not too terrible. It's kind of hard to do, but once you've kind of pushed it in there, it's not going to come out. It usually doesn't just fall right out. And if you notice here, I've come to the conclusion I've got enough in there in order to hold the hip where needed. So I'm just going to trim this down and test it here and see how well this works. I'm going to try to shove the rest of the Teflon into the crease there, because some of it was still sticking out a little bit. So it just takes some patience. That's probably the biggest thing I have to emphasize on this type of repair. This is not something you can do in 20 minutes. Sometimes it may take you a little longer to do. In my case, it did take me about around 15-20 minutes to do the full repair on him, but not everybody will have the same mileage as I did on this. It also just depends on how loose the joints are on your figure. If your figure's extremely loose like mine was, you can tell like he can actually hold his legs up now. He couldn't do that at all. But if you notice his other leg, it's still pretty loose, and I'm going to fix that in too, because I don't want any of the I don't want him to not be able to stand up, because that's my biggest thing with these figures. I like the figures to have ability to stand. So I'm taking what I have left of that one piece of Teflon, and I'm going to, put it in here and try to wedge the piece in, which, since it's been stretched out a little bit, kind of helps. I primarily recommend rolling the plumber's tape between your fingers to kind of create some heat frictions. That way it kind of sticks to itself. And then just kind of wrap it around the leg like I am doing right here. And I'm just, really kind of just having to shove it in with my fingernails. Like, it takes a little bit of strength to do this. Like I said, you can use anything you really need to push the Teflon on the inside of this, but I just wanted to show you guys this quick fix because this is something I know that's very common with the 3POs that I've seen in the past. But this will work, like I said, on any of the other figures that are in the Star Wars line. Now, I do know there are other figures out there. I believe Mask has this same situation with the arms and legs. They get kind of loose because everything's kind of pinned together. If it does have a rivet in the back, you can fix it with Teflon. Don't let anybody fool you and say, oh, no, it's a piece of junk, you gotta get rid of it or whatever. Or it's a non-salvageable figure, because lots of times when you guys go to these conventions, you'll find these figures thrown in a bin. They're loose. Nobody wants them. Well, it takes a few minutes and you can literally fix them at home with a $5 roll of plumber's tape. That will probably last you. You could probably do at least 20-30 figures with one roll of this stuff. It really does not take much. And like I said, it's a patience thing. It really is a patience thing with these. And you can see, yeah, I may be struggling a little bit here, but who doesn't struggle when they're trying to fix these guys? But here we go. I got the legs in really good condition, and the arms are in good condition. I could pose him now, and he doesn't fall over. Now, I'm going to move over here and try attempting to do the head. This didn't work out very well for me. The head portion didn't. I did notice the one arm, it was a little loose though. So I'm just basically going to shove another piece of Teflon in there. It doesn't hurt. Like I said, you can stack this stuff. It really isn't going to hurt it. And if it's a little bit loose, go ahead and put another piece in there. It isn't going to hurt anything at all. If anything, it may work its way back out, but it's not hard to repair. And most of us, when we get these toys, we tend to just pose them and put them on a shelf, or put them in a vehicle, or just have them standing on a display stand or something like that. If you notice, see, he's not loose like he was before. And as for, like I said, I'm able to move his legs pretty good. You can see a tiny bit of that Teflon sticking out, but that's okay. I mean, I go back later on actually and start pushing those pieces back in a little better. So I'm going to attempt to fix the head. Now the head portion is a lot more difficult because this thing was really loose on the top, on the like I said, around the neck joint, and it just did not work out for me. Like I said, your mileage may vary on this stuff. It's just a quick thing to show you guys what is you have capability of doing out there to fix some of your toys that I know costs some of you guys quite a bit of money, and some of you guys have your toys from your childhood and you want to fix your toys from your childhood so that way you can enjoy them again. And this is like one of the biggest things I personally think is do what you can to salvage the ones that you have. Or if you have a friend of yours that was getting rid of them, it's like, oh, I don't want these anymore, and they're all in not very good condition. They're not hard to repair. Just take some patience and some time. But yeah, I attempt to try to fix the head portion here, which I'm just cutting little pieces of Teflon off, and it looks like he got flung. And some of you eagle eye guys out there are probably like, it looks like he has a pin stuck in one of his feet. He does. I did attempt to try to remove that pin out of his foot, but I was like, you know what, it's not a big deal. I have the other foot's got the hole in it, so I use it because he primarily just stands in my Millennium Falcon. He doesn't like go anywhere else anyway. But I was able to actually kind of put this in here to tighten up the head some, but when I got to moving the head, the piece of Teflon just fell right back out. I might go back and actually just use thread to put around the neck piece just to kind of keep him a little more stable, but I mean, it does work. It's not the easiest fix to do with the Teflon around the neck piece, but it works actually pretty well on the arms and the legs. I didn't really have an issue with the Teflon coming off, but if you notice, see, it literally just came off. But yeah, this is a quick fix. And there you go. So I'm looking at Luke Skywalker and my Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're both rough condition, I know that. But the big thing is they don't have lightsabers. So I was like, you know what? A toothpick actually fits perfectly in the armhole to pretty much give him a lightsaber. And I was like, it'd be kind of nice for me to actually have lightsabers for these guys. And I just figured, you know, it'd be kind of nice to actually have something that kind of functions. I know they have reproduction ones out there, but to be honest, these guys are not in the best condition, and I'm like, they're just going to kind of just chill in my Millennium Falcon anyway. So take a lightsaber, or take a toothpick, and I just pretty much cut it down to the length that I want it. And I lost that piece. That's what I'm trying to do right now, is find that piece that flew off, because I don't want to get up and stick myself in the foot with that. But just showing you, it does fit, and you can pull it out. Now, yes, I do know that the toothpick is tapered, but that's okay. You want it to be tapered, so that way it makes it easy for you to be able to just, like, you know, adjust the length of the saber that you want. You could leave it the full length of the toothpick, but it will stick out quite a bit, and you'll be kind of stuck with a Luke walking around with that. But you can put it in the opposite way, and it just kind of works. But to be honest, this is just kind of a quick little job to give him something that's functional, versus him just kind of standing there holding a looks like a flashlight. So I decided I'm gonna try to sand down the ends here a little bit and make this work a little better, because I want to have some kind of function to it, but I don't want it to be one of those things that will hurt somebody, or me pick up a splinter later on, or somebody else, you know, kind of messing with my figures. It's just one of those things. I mean, I don't have a lot of people looking at my stuff, you know, that often. They don't really come over and like handle my figures and such on the shelf, but I'm big on trying to make sure that whatever I'm doing is something that I can enjoy in the future myself. So I'm going to do the same thing here for Obi-Wan. I'm going to, you know, measure it in there, push it in, see how far it goes in, because I don't want it to go past his elbow. I want to at least, you know, do the full channel of the arm, and just have just enough sticking out on the end that I can just like grab the end and then pull it out. Now, the original toys had a tiny little, almost like a teeny piece of thread plastic attached to it that you pull out, that was really thin. And it was kind of weird seeing that little piece of thin plastic sticking out, and then, you know, the saber. And I understood it was like so you can pull the saber out. But I really never understood why they just didn't just make the saber stick out just a tiny little bit for you to just pull it out all the way instead of having that little piece of thread. To me, the little thread things didn't even last anyway on them, especially the ones I played with when I was a kid. There were a lot of them that I found that were broken off, and it's just a really, you know, thing. It's not something that's hard to replace, but in some ways it can be. So I'm just taking some acrylic paint here, and I'm going to paint the saber for Luke. Obviously I'm going to be doing it in blue. I forget what color of blue that is. You can find these paints primarily at Walmart's or Michael's or even Hobby Lobby. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to throw some paint on this, so that way it's got a blue blade to it. And pretty simple stuff. I just wanted to make sure that I cover it pretty well. I'm not so worried about the end that's going to go inside the arm, but I just wanted at least the blade part to kind of stick out. So I'm going to kind of lay it here in my little trough here and let that dry. And then I will turn around and come back and do the same thing for Obi-Wan. Okay, here we are. I'm getting ready to do Obi-Wan's. I've got yellow here for his saber. And this is the blue I used, was a cobalt hue. And then as for this, I just used a King's Gold. It's got a nice, vibrant gold, so it works pretty well, especially for Obi-Wan. And if you think about it, the box art way back in the day had Obi-Wan with a yellow lightsaber, and Luke had a blue one. So I'm doing what's pretty much what was on the box art, but I'm just trying to make these kind of work as a custom type of thing for me. I'm not going to be going through and doing a whole bunch of like touch-ups and stuff on the figures themselves, because I kind of like the idea that they have a little bit of wear to them. So as soon as these dry, we'll be right back. And we're back, and I'm going to show you guys how these sabers will actually fit in their hands. Notice Luke's will just slide right in. It does a pretty good job of it. It's not too terrible. It's a bit of a tight fit because of the paint, but I don't think it's bad. Does make it a little tight, which is a good thing because you don't want these to actually fall out. And it may scrape off a little bit of the paint, but that's okay. It didn't like actually stick to the figure itself, but just enough so it's like, you know, he's got a little bit of a saber kind of sticking out, which, you know, that's primarily what we wanted anyway. We don't want anything insane. I don't need a saber that's as tall as he is. You know, they do stick out quite a bit, and it lets me like retract it in, which is pretty much all I was really going for here. I wasn't really going for anything insane. I do go back later on and actually touch these up a little bit, and I do throw a little bit of a clear coat over them to make them a little better, but they work pretty good. They're not too terrible. I'm just glad that this actually worked out the way I wanted it to. And I'm going to show you guys a couple other things here I have going on. I do have Chewie and Han Solo kind of standing here too. And these figures are pretty beat up too. They're not they're not the best condition, but they're definitely something that I do like still. But yeah, I'm just touching up the paint here a little bit just to kind of give it a little, you know, another coat. And it's acrylic. It doesn't take long for it to dry. So I pretty much did all this kind of in one day. It wasn't like it took 2 or 3 days to do this. So I just primarily do that and then just touch them up and let them set. It was primarily the blue one that scraped off. The yellow one was not as bad. And here we are. I'm going to show you guys the Chewbacca figure I have. I got a gun that I basically had from kind of like a sprue that had a whole bunch of different guns. I don't actually have his real rifle, so I was like, you know what, this will work just fine for a gun for him. And the same thing for Han Solo. I just grabbed a gun that looked good enough for it to work, and I did have to file down the handle a little bit so that way it actually fit in his hand properly. But to be honest, I didn't mind this. This works pretty well. I just wanted him to have some kind of sidearm because it's really useful in order to have the correct stuff for my figures. So I'm glad you guys tuned in. Hope you guys will enjoy seeing more of these kind of little videos here in the future. And that's all I've got for now. This has been Plasticon, and this is me signing off. Peace out, y'all. I'll see you around. And that's it. Bye.